Hello, everyone. It's a little after 2, so we're going to get started, and I'll let people in after we get done here with this short intro. Welcome to the final webinar in our digital spring cleaning series. Sad to have it come to an end, but this capstone webinar is going to be a good one. Today, you're going to learn about your digital afterlife and what you need to do to protect that. For those of you returning from our first 2 webinars of this series, welcome back. And for the newcomers, we're happy to have you join us for this final series end. My name is Jennifer Lisinski. I'm Vice President of Marketing for St. John's, and I'm serving as your host today. Also, will be manning the controls and helping as Daniel's presenting. I'd like to, again, remind everyone of our few logistical items before we move to today's webinar, because I noticed a few people tried to unmute themselves. So session attendees are automatically muted. Please stay muted for the experience of all guests. We thank you for that. If you have questions during the session, please type them into the chat. The chat functionality is an icon at the bottom. You can click on that and type in any questions or concerns you have. They can be directed to individuals or to the host or to everyone, and you press return so that you can get those chats posted. We'll also have a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. So if you think of questions and you want to add them, you can do that throughout, or you can add them at the end when we have the Q&A portion, and we'll answer those questions. If you're having any problems connecting during the session, please use the chat functionality to contact me, and I'll try my best to help you with that. We certainly hope just a minute here. We certainly hope that you enjoy the seminar today. As I said before, this is the kinds of programs we do every day here at St. John's. We have a lot going on, and there's always something to do and learn in our communities. If you have not done so already, I encourage you to check out our website at stjohnsliving.org. It has a lot of resources and information about the benefits of independent living and all the amenities that we have in our communities. And tours really are the best way to experience us firsthand. So we welcome you to do that either in person or in virtual format. We'd love to host you. Stephanie, Dawn, and Cindy, one of our sales team members, can help you with that. They would be your contact for visiting us, and their contact information was previously shared in the pre-show, but we'll also put it up at the end if you you want to connect with them. So now allow me to introduce our main speaker for this afternoon, and most of you know him already. He's well positioned to give us great content today. Daniel Jones is an independent instructor providing older adults with computer, internet, and social networking skills to enhance their lives and keep them connected. We all want to stay connected. His computer courses and seminars break down the barriers of fear and intimidation, often associated with learning new technology for all of us. He provides elders with a greater understanding of the options and tools available through a patient, fun, and easy to learn approach, which you've already witnessed. And Daniel's also available for private, in-home, one-to-one instruction, as well as group instruction, and he does that at a variety of senior communities like ours and libraries in the Rochester and upstate New York area. He's taught 7,325 people to this date exactly, and in 2010 Daniel received his certificate in gerontology through St. John Fisher College and is a certified Eden Alternative Associate, and this year Daniel will reach 11 years of business. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon. You're going to learn a lot, and we're happy to have you here. And now I'm going to turn it over to Daniel.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So first off, I want to thank Jen and all the folks over at St. John's for having me again today for this final session for this time of year. So let's get right into it. So today we are going to talk about your digital afterlife and what that means and how you can prepare for your digital afterlife. I'm going to share with you some statistics that I think you might find interesting to help kind of wrap our head around the topic today. I'm going to talk about the Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, what that act is, why it's so important for us today. I'll share with you 4 tips to help get your digital estate in order. We'll also talk about the idea of creating a social media will and how to close online accounts upon your death. And we'll also talk about how you can live forever online. And the last thing I'll share with you today is a list of resources that I pulled from for today's seminar, as well as some other things. So I won't reintroduce myself, but again, my name is Daniel Jones. I am an independent teacher, and the one thing that I am not is an attorney. Much of what I'm going to be sharing with you today has a legal aspect to it. So I can't answer specific legal questions, but chances are I should be able to answer most of your questions that you might have for me today. All right. One thing that I always talk about when it comes to any type of technology is fear. Fear is the single biggest barrier I run into when it comes to teaching. Fear that I'm too old to learn. Fear that if I, give my passwords to somebody, they're going to get stolen. Fear of even talking about death. It's obviously something that none of us like to think about, but we're all going to die, and we all need to make plans for that. And one of the things that you can do is doing your digital planning for your, or planning for your digital assets. But part of my goal as an instructor is to help you overcome the fear that you may have towards technology, and specifically this topic today. And this is my favorite quote of all time. Fear is the mortal enemy of creativity, innovation, and happiness. I think fear holds us back on a lot of things that we put off or we just don't want to do. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start off by introducing you to Jesse Berlin's dad.
You ever do something crazy because you just don't know what to do anymore? Well, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm calling out to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. You've been putting out these new movies, these 1-minute movies that everybody's been sharing, and I think they're great. Well, my son passed away January 28th. ...2012, and we can't access his Facebook account. I've tried emailing different things, but it ain't working. All we want to do is see his movie. That's it. I don't even need to get on his account. If you guys could... If you guys could just do it yourself, I don't care. But regardless, everybody does these videos and things and they go viral. That's all I'm trying to do. So I'm asking my friends to share this video, and your friends to share it, and so on and so forth, and maybe somebody will see it that counts. I know it's a shot in the dark, but I don't care. I want to see my son's video. His name's Jesse Berlin. So please help me. I appreciate it. Thanks.
The reason I share this video is because this single video changed policy at Facebook. And it changed policy in terms of what happens to a Facebook account upon a user's death. What happens to that data? What happens to that content? And this single video shared on YouTube was shared to millions of people. And it was basically his cry out to change policy. And it changed policy at Facebook, it changed policy at Twitter, and it changed policy at a lot of companies because of this kind of this was the catalyst that kind of started it all. And we're going to get back to that. So what happens to all your digital assets after you're gone? Entrepreneurs and legislative groups are trying to offer solutions and build awareness of the complications surrounding a person's digital estate upon their death. And what do I mean by digital assets? When I say digital assets, I mean your email accounts, your bank accounts, your passwords, your usernames, your security questions. What happens to all this stuff upon your death? And what do you want to do with that stuff upon your death? Do you want to pass it on? Do you want to close accounts? These are the types of things that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm just going to share with you a few numbers, a few statistics here that I think will be helpful. So there are over 4 billion email addresses worldwide. There are over 3 billion Facebook users, over 350 million Twitter accounts, over 2 billion YouTube videos uploaded every year. And 61% of internet users bank online. And the fastest growing segment of people banking online are people over the age of 65. So not everything, a lot of what we do is done online, and we have online accounts and we have usernames and passwords. What do we do with all this stuff? 47% of adults access social media websites, but only 20% of those people have considered about what happens to their digital profile after they die. There are 30+ million accounts on Facebook for dead people. And between the years 2060 and 2130 is the approximate point at which there will be more dead people on Facebook than there will be live people, assuming that Facebook is still around at that time. Every minute, 3 Facebook users die. In the UK, 70% of people 65 to 74 are active online. The fastest growing segment of people who are active online are 65 and older. And if you take that segment, the fastest segment is 85 and older. We're living longer. More of us are online. So what happens to your digital estate? What happens to your digital assets when you die? I've got a video here. It's about maybe 7 minutes long, and it's a really good kind of overall discussion about your digital assets, digital estate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break this down into more detail.
Do you have an email account? How about a Facebook page? Do you bank online, shop online, pay your gas, light, or cable TV bill over the internet? I've just laid out more than a half dozen accounts that many of us have, likely each with its own password. These accounts don't die with us. The passwords to each of them are oftentimes locked away with only one person, the deceased, which means that valuable online assets could be lost forever or be found by those looking to exploit them. Take the case of Glenn Williamson, a tech entrepreneur in Portland, Oregon. In August of 2012, he got the worst possible news.
I was in the Philippines speaking at a conference, and when your phone, goes off 15 times and it's 3 o'clock in the morning in the United States, you have a bad feeling. You know it's not a good call.
Glenn's 73-year-old mother, Lee, had died. As her fiduciary and as a 25-year veteran of the tech world, it fell to him to manage her online accounts.
I knew my mom, being a cool grandma, was on Twitter. So I knew she was on Twitter, and I knew she had a Yahoo account, so we had a baseline to start, but that's all we knew.
After 20 hours of searching, Glenn found 13 different accounts belonging to his mother, including email, social media, and shopping accounts.
So we broke it down into categories: travel, sentimental value, security, and basically we searched on about 75 different sites.
Some had real value.
So after going through all the airlines, we got to United, and United did indeed have my mom as a customer, and there was 54,000 miles that we were able to retrieve for our family.
All this while he was grieving.
And it's a painful, it's a long process, And everybody means well, but if one more person tells you they're sorry, it's like, okay, I just need to know, did she have an account or not?
Williamson and his wife are online savvy, relatively young, and it was still tough to find all those accounts.
So the average person, especially if the average person is doing it in their 60s, it's a very, very difficult process.
Glenn's problems managing his mother's online estate helped inspire him to start a business solution called WebCease, an online service that helps people search for their deceased loved ones' digital assets. It uses a person's basic information, like an email address, and finds the major online accounts that are linked to it. And although WebCease won't shut down an account for you, it will tell you what can be done under a website's specific terms of service.
My mom had an asset inventory of her financial accounts, but she didn't have an asset inventory of all things digital. And that's really what we provide to the family, is we provide them at a high level a digital asset inventory. So you can look through it and say, oh, my mom was on Amazon and iTunes, and she had Marriott and Hyatt, etc. So that's really the value we provide.
WebCease is one of a handful of websites that has sprung up over the last few years. Sites like Navigator, the DocSafe, Capsule, My CyberSafe, and Afternote, all of them trying to tackle what is becoming an increasingly common problem.
Nowadays, everyone keeps their filing cabinets on their computers, and they may not have shared the access to that with their families.
Suzanne Walsh is an estate lawyer in Hartford, Connecticut.
I have received panic calls from family members who don't know passwords, don't know the nature of the online accounts. They simply know mom paid the bills online, and they may not even be sure about the bank.
Walsh says that the main problem is one of access. In many cases, we've made it virtually illegal for anyone else to use our online accounts. It starts with those terms of service agreements, the fine print of the online world. Once the I agree button is pressed, it's as good as a contract.
Many of them prohibit the sharing of passwords, and they prohibit third-party access. So right now, they tend to bar anybody but the account holder accessing the account.
That means even if the account holder is dead. Internet service providers say they're following the letter of the law, as spelled out in the 1986 Stored Communications Act, which prohibits anyone from accessing private information online without permission.
The problem with fiduciary access now is that it may be a violation of federal privacy law or a Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. It may be an actual criminal act to violate the terms of service agreement.
But being unable to access or shut down a deceased loved one's accounts could have unforeseen risks, as Glenn Williamson, who spent 20 years in online security, will tell you.
The year after somebody passes is one of the most vulnerable times for identity theft. It's a heinous crime, but what the bad guys do, because death is public record, they'll go out there and they'll comb for recently deceased and they'll create a fake identity because the deceased don't check emails and they don't get the mail.
Every year, more than 2 million Americans are the posthumous victims of identity fraud. Thieves can use a dead person's information to rack up credit card charges, apply for loans, or even file false tax returns. And much of this information can be found on the internet through something as simple as a shopping account. To date, only 9 states have any laws in effect that govern online estate planning. Suzanne Walsh, who chairs a committee on the Uniform Law Commission, an organization which drafts laws it hopes to standardize in all 50 states, is trying to change that. Last year, Walsh's committee finished drafting a bill called the Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, which would give fiduciaries the same rights over online estates as they now have over physical estates.
Fiduciaries traditionally have access to everything, especially in administering estates. And that used to mean opening up the mailbox, opening up the file cabinet, rifling through the desk. Our act is designed to continue that and facilitate that, given the different nature of the digital assets.
The bill was reviewed and enacted by the Uniform Law Commission last July, but it's still up to individual state legislatures to propose it and pass it as law. Although the act has been introduced in 18 states, so far only one state, Delaware, has signed the act into law. However, the act is not without its critics. The general counsel of a Washington, D.C.-based group called the State Privacy and Security Coalition, which represents the interests of Google, Yahoo, and Facebook, among others, came out against Delaware's new law, saying, quote, "This law takes no account of minimizing intrusions into the privacy of third parties who communicated with the deceased. This would include highly confidential communications to decedents from third parties who are still alive, who would be very surprised that an executor is reviewing the communications." But despite the pushback, Suzanne Walsh is hopeful that her committee's work will be recognized in more state legislatures.
Widespread enactment is our goal. That's our primary goal. Certainly we hope and expect that it won't take more than a year or two for most of the states to adopt this product.
While the states debate the act, some internet service providers have begun proposing their own solutions to the problems raised by digital estates. In 2013, Google introduced a new feature called Inactive Account Manager, which would give users the choice of having their accounts transferred to specific people after a set period of inactivity, or having them automatically deleted. And last month, Facebook announced their own feature for dealing with digital estate management called Legacy Contacts. Users can now choose a Facebook friend to maintain their account after they die, but the designated friend cannot delete the account or respond to messages intended for the deceased. Facebook users also have the option to have their account deleted upon their death. But beyond new user features and state laws, there are steps that people can take now to make the process of digital estate management easier on next of kin. First, create an inventory list of all your online accounts and passwords for your fiduciary. Stipulate what to do with your email accounts in a will, and read the terms of service agreements so you can understand how, or even if, access to your accounts can be granted to someone else. But Glenn Williamson says, no matter what steps you take or what laws are eventually passed, managing a digital estate for a loved one will always be a long, arduous, and painful process.
Okay, so the Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act is a very important update to the internet age. A generation ago, we stored all our files in cabinets, we stored our photos in photo albums, and mail was delivered by an actual human being. Today, we are more likely to use the internet to communicate and store our data and our information. So this act ensures that account holders retain control of their digital property and can plan for its ultimate disposition after their death. Unless the account holder instructs otherwise, legally appointed fiduciaries will have the same access to digital assets as they have always had with tangible assets, and the same duty to comply with the account holder's instructions. So what does that mean? That means that someone handling your estate, your tangible estate or your financial estate, they will also now be given the opportunity and the right to manage your digital estate. So back in 1986, there was a law that stated that that couldn't happen. That me as the account holder was the only person that could use that account, could have access to that account. And if I gave my information to someone else, my passwords to someone else, and shared my credentials, my online credentials with something else, that potentially is a federal crime. Well, in 1986, the internet it barely existed. So this is a huge update to the internet age. So back when this video was made back in 2016, only Delaware had instituted this into law. Fast forward to today, and all the blue states that you see here have now enacted this act, and it is now law. So that gives us much more flexibility and gives us more legal right to our content and how we want to be able to share and distribute access to that content legally. Okay, so some tips to help get your digital estate in order. The number one thing you can do is create an inventory list of all your online accounts and passwords for your fiduciary. Make a list of your digital property, including your online accounts, your usernames, your passwords, your security questions, anything that you have to do that has to deal with an online account. Write it down and keep it somewhere safe, not somewhere convenient. I stress that because if you store all your passwords in a notebook that says passwords and it's in your desk drawer where your computer is, that's not safe. Because someone breaks into your home, the first thing they're going to do is that when they see your computers, they're going to start pulling out the drawers to see where's their password book. So keep it somewhere safe, not somewhere convenient. And keep it updated. Many times we have to change our usernames. We have to change our passwords. So make sure you keep this document or documents updated. I am currently working with a few in-home clients of mine, and we're going through their passwords. There's one in particular that I'm working with now, who I've been working with for probably five or six sessions, trying to organize all her passwords. Why isn't it taking it so long? Why it's taking it so long? Because she has about 30 passwords, maybe even more. And she has some passwords written on scraps of paper, some passwords she has in a notebook, some passwords she has on her phone, some passwords she has on her iPad, some passwords she has stored on her computer. They're all over the place. They're completely disorganized. And she has written down multiple passwords for the same account. So she's not sure which account is, or which password is the right password. So what we're doing is going through every single account, logging in, typing in the password. If the password is incorrect, then we reset the password and we write it down and we create a master list. Once the master list is created and confirmed, we throw everything else out so there's no confusion. One of the things you can do is what's called a password manager software or password manager app.
If you're like most people, trying to keep track of your different internet passwords can be like herding cats. Now take a guy like Don here, who uses the internet to work, socialize, organize, and play. He's on Facebook and Twitter, he's got 4 different email accounts, he blogs about his passion for doing daredevil stunts, manages his investments, Skypes, sells things, shops, watches movies, and on and on and on. And each and every account he uses has its own username and password to keep track of. But fortunately, there's an easy way to securely save and protect your password on all your phones, tablets, or computers. It's called Password Box. Password Box is a virtual safety deposit box using the same encryption methods as the US government, and only you have the master password to unlock it. Adding passwords is simple. Password Box automatically saves them while you surf the web. Then just click on the site you want to log into and ta-da! Like magic, you're logged in. It's a real time saver. What's also great is that Password Box allows you to share your passwords with your family or coworkers during your life, and even after. Yep, that's right. If Don here is really smart, he'll pass his important accounts onto his loved ones and preserve his digital legacy before attempting to jump the Grand Canyon on a Vespa next month. Good luck, Don. So join Don here and download Password Box for free now at passwordbox.com.
So there are lots of what are called password manager apps and password manager software. These are probably the most popular. The reason I'm showing you this is just so that you're aware of it. I personally am not necessarily recommending it, but I do want you to be aware of it. Basically, how password managers work is, so let's pretend you download and install this password manager app called LastPass. You basically create a master password that gets you in the app. Once you're in the application, you can enter all the passwords for all your accounts, and they're stored in one location inside a software application. It's very, very convenient. And, you know, everything that I read about password managers say they're safe and so on, but I'm not convinced yet. I'm a little bit old school when it comes to passwords. What I don't like about a password manager idea is that I don't want to give LastPass or Keeper or Dashlane potential access to all my passwords. I don't want a third party that I don't know to have potential access to my passwords. All of them claim that they don't, and maybe they don't. It's just I'm personally not. I don't like that idea. At least not right now in 2022. I've got many colleagues who use Dashlane. Dashlane is probably one of the most popular ones, and they've never had a problem with Dashlane. It's very, very convenient. It's super easy because they only need to memorize one password, and that's the password to get in. So I'm just sharing it with you. I'm not necessarily promoting it. Okay, so tip number 1, create an inventory list of all your passwords and usernames. Tip number 2 is amend your will or other estate planning documents to specify who should have access to your digital assets. Is there someone in your family that you don't want to have access to your accounts? Maybe you don't want anyone in your family to have access to your accounts. Maybe you want only an attorney or a best friend or whatever that might be. But specify that, update that in your will. Stipulate what you want to do with your email, your social media accounts, your online accounts, your iCloud account, whatever it is, that account that you might have. And make as many decisions as you can in advance. Would you want your Facebook account to be deleted or memorialized? Do you want a family member to have access to your email accounts, or would you prefer that they be deleted after your death? For some reason, do certain email accounts need to remain open? These are things that you just have to ask yourself. Are there digital assets such as music that you've purchased or ebooks that you've purchased that you might be able to pass along to somebody? In the video we saw, the son of the mother who passed away was able to find airline miles and be able to pass those airline miles on to family members. If you make your choices before death and describe your wishes in your will, then you have a better chance of making sure your digital assets are handled exactly the way you want them to be. So I'm just going to share a little personal note about these particular topics. My mom has given what I consider one of the great gifts that she has given me and my siblings. She has planned her funeral completely. Headstone purchased, in the ground, waiting for the final date to be added. Her funeral is paid for. Flowers, what flowers she wants has been determined. What songs she wants played at her funeral has been determined. I helped my mom write her obituary so that she wrote what she wants to say in her obituary, as opposed to leaving it up to me or my siblings to try to figure out what we want to say. The fact that my mom has taken care of all this for us has relieved so much stress, because the day she dies is going to be awful, and we are going to be in mourning. And the last thing that we want to have to do is think about what mom would have wanted. Everything is written down. And I say this is a great gift because none of us have to worry about it. We never have to guess what she wanted. So I stress to you, not only, if you don't have a will, create a will. If you're plan your funeral arrangements while you still can. Add these types of things in terms of your digital assets to your will to designate who you want to have what. I'll also say that it doesn't even have to do with your death. Okay, if you're incapacitated, if you're in the hospital for some reason, and someone needs to take care of your accounts, has to pay your bills online, they need to have access to your passwords. A perfect example happened to my cousin. My aunt was hospitalized for months. He did not have any access to any of her online accounts to pay any bills or anything like that because she hadn't written down any of her passwords, or at least he couldn't find them anywhere. And she was incapacitated. She couldn't tell him. So if anything, just do it and be able to pass this information on to someone that you trust. Tip number 3, the one thing that none of us do, which is read the terms of service. Read the privacy policy and terms of service agreement for each online account that you're about to join. More and more online companies have specific policies regarding the account of a deceased user. None of us read the terms of service because they're 40 pages long and they're this tiny type. So none of us are going to do it. But if you want to find out specifically your rights in terms of your account upon your death, it's going to be in those terms. In many cases, you can designate a person to be your legacy contact upon your death. So if something happens to you, whether you die or whether you're incapacitated, you can set up somebody, you can designate another person to manage that account for you. And you can do it legally now. So companies like Google and Amazon and PayPal and Facebook and AOL, all these companies have all instituted policies around a deceased user's account. And it all started with Facebook and that video that I shared with you in the very beginning of Jesse Berlin's dad. That was the catalyst. So for example, Google has a policy, and if any of you have a Gmail account, if you have a Gmail account, that means you have a Google account. So what you can do is you can set up in your Google account what's called an inactive account manager. And what you can do is you can set it up so that if your account has not been if you have not accessed your account in a certain period of time, let's say 3 months, another person can be contacted on your behalf to see if everything's okay. So basically, if I set mine up for 6 months, if I don't do anything with my Gmail account for 6 months, my sister will get an email basically from Google saying, hey, is everything okay with Daniel? We noticed he hasn't been online. And then from there, she has the option to delete the account or manage that account based on my wishes. With Google, you can submit a request regarding a deceased user's account. With Facebook, you can have your Facebook account memorialized upon your death, or you can have it deleted upon your death. But all these things have to be set up ahead of time. What does it mean to have a Facebook account memorialized? Basically, what that means is the Facebook account of the deceased person is still out there. It's still active so that people can see photographs of you that you've shared, the posts that you've shared. A perfect example is one of my dear friends, Robert, passed away about 10 months ago. His Facebook account is still active. So I can go to his Facebook account and I can kind of reminisce and go through the photos that he has shared. And I think it's a really wonderful way to help in the mourning process. Some people don't want that. Some people say, you know what, when I'm gone, I want everything deleted, and that's perfectly fine. But state what your wishes are so that all of this is determined ahead of time. As a Facebook user, you can also have a special request for a deceased person's account as well. So if someone dies that I'm not in charge of, I can at least request access to that deceased person. But I'm going to have a lot of proof. I'm going to have to prove who I am, that the person is deceased, and what is my relationship to that person. Microsoft has also created a similar process. And this, I was in a Microsoft community chat room not too long ago, and this person posed the question to Microsoft. My family member died recently / is in a coma. What do I need to do to access their Microsoft account? Microsoft has instituted what's called a next of kin process to be able to access that person's Microsoft account. Many times, I would say, just about in all these cases, if you have not set up or designated someone ahead of time, then the person trying to access your account has to have proof. They might have to provide a death certificate to that company for that account, or a government issued ID. They may have to prove their relationship with the deceased user. They might have to provide a public obituary as well for proof that the person is deceased. So the more you can do ahead of time, the better you can rest at night knowing that all of this is taken care of. And you've done a huge service to your family or for your family. The fourth tip is to back up your computer. Make sure your computer is continuously backed up using an external hard drive for storage, or use an online service to securely back up your computer files. Okay, more and more of us are not storing files physically on our computer now. Most of us are using the cloud to back up photographs and videos and email. But if you do have files stored on your computer, make sure that those are backed up. And you want to make sure that you have an external hard drive plugged into your computer so that it's constantly being backed up. So for example, I have one of these, it's just called an external hard drive. I have one of these plugged into the back of my computer. It backs up everything on my computer every hour on the hour. And it only backs up what has changed in that hour. Now, I have a ton of stuff on my computer, so I need one of these, but you may not have a lot of stuff on your computer. So a flash drive, or some people call it a flash drive, a thumb drive, a USB drive, one of these might be enough. And back up your computer, give this backup or store it someplace else. You can also back up your computer using an online cloud backup service like Carbonite. Carbonite is probably the most popular one out there. There's Dropbox, there's the Apple iCloud, there's OneDrive. If you're a PC user, Microsoft OneDrive is a cloud backup service. That's another way that you can back up your stuff, so that if you lose everything, you can always retrieve it because it's backed up somewhere else. Okay, the next video I'm going to share with you talks about how to protect your afterlife in the digital world. This video is very interesting, and it's also kind of creepy. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll let you watch. And kind of funny.
Used to be, you knew what to do with all the memorabilia of your life. You'd put it in a box to give to your kids, or you'd write it into your will. But these days, the most complete record of your life may not be in boxes. It may be online. All those photos, videos, daily events on Facebook, thoughts on Twitter. What happens to all that stuff when you move on to the great cyber cafe in the sky?
We have entered this time as a society where we're a bit ahead of our laws and our policies with respect to our digital property.
Evan Carroll is an expert on what happens to our online stuff when we die. He and his co-author maintain a blog, and they've even written a book.
Some states have laws, some states don't. Some people put these things in their wills now, some people don't. So there are so many different things that could happen.
Nobody crashed into that messy state of affairs harder than John Berlin.
It was just one more memory I wanted of him.
Earlier this year, on Facebook's 10th anniversary, it offered every member a beautiful 1-minute musical montage of his or her Facebook life. Jesse Berlin had died in 2012, and his father John dearly wanted to see his son's montage video.
Only problem with that was you had to be on his page to request it. I didn't have access to his page. I didn't know his password.
You ever do something crazy because you just don't know what to do anymore?
So he had a desperate, great idea. He made a YouTube video.
Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook.
Took my iPhone, I propped it up on a picture against the wall, and I just poured my heart out on it to Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg.
All we want to do is see his movie. That's it.
3 million people watched his plea.
And by the end of the day, Facebook called me.
Facebook gave John access to his son's video and further improved its existing policies. If your loved one passes away, you can ask for that Facebook account to be what's called memorialized.
Whatever privacy settings that were in place at the time the account was memorialized, they allow those to persist. Your Facebook profile can become a memorial to you and can be a place for communal bereavement where they share messages.
On Google, you can specify in advance exactly what should happen if Google doesn't hear from you for a few months.
You can ask them to pass information to another individual. You can ask them to delete the account. You can set up an autoresponder to your Gmail account. Hey, I'm no longer checking this account for whatever reason.
Hey, I'm no longer alive.
That's a strange email to write.
Already, 30 million Facebook accounts belong to dead people. To some, that's a business opportunity. There are now websites that, upon your death, automatically send your list of passwords to someone you've specified.
Last words. We all hope we'll get a chance to say some, but not knowing when or where we're going to die makes it a bit tricky.
There are sites that send emails after you've gone, or publish a posthumous Facebook post.
It can be a bid farewell, a favorite joke, a long-kept secret.
Other sites serve as perpetual lockers for your photos and files.
So after you pass on, presumably your heirs or relatives who want a dose of Bruce could go up there, and what would they do?
Well, you know, they could look through the files.
Bruce Duncan is the managing director of the Terasem Movement Foundation. It runs this free website, lifenaut.com.
This is a picture of me when I was 3 years old. So they could say, well, that's great-grandfather Bruce, and that's where he lived.
Before the beard.
Before the beard, yeah.
Can you tell jokes?
LifeNaut and other sites also offer to create conversational animated versions of you.
I'll spend time teaching it.
So that, you know, you're not really gone at all.
Hey, I'm so glad to see you. What's up?
And I can say, hi, it's good to see you too. What kind of music do you like?
I love music.
Well, that narrows it down.
Yeah, so like...
Hello, David.
Terasem is also experimenting with an even creepier way to keep your memory alive.
Where were you born?
I am originally from Los Angeles, you know.
Bina 48's looks and responses are based on a real person's. Bina Rothblatt, the wife of Terasem's founder.
How far along is Bina 48?
So she is like the first, what I would call a pretty primitive demonstration of that idea.
Primitive is right.
Were you married?
and number 160, and number 160, and number 160, and number 160.
Are you
and
quite all
number
right?
160, and number
Evan Carroll isn't quite sold.
To be honest, I feel like some of those services are a bit of a novelty, and I wouldn't rely upon them to be here when I'm gone.
So suppose that I am someone who's very private and I don't want my stuff to live on after I'm gone. What are the steps I can take now?
The number one thing I would recommend you do is you make sure your family knows those wishes and they know where your files are stored.
Okay, and now what if I'm the opposite? What if I want my stuff to live on for future generations to enjoy? What are my best chances?
Well, it's the exact same thing. You want your family to know, these are my wishes, this is what I would like to happen. And of course, back up your content, because multiple copies keep stuff safe.
Because we all know there's only 3 sure things in life: death, taxes, and hard drive failure.
Absolutely. Hard drives fail all the time.
Let's see. Just take a look at where I'm at right now. Okay. Oh, bear with me. Okay, you might want to adjust your volume on this one because this starts out really loud. So well, this video, short video that I think is kind of an interesting way of, you know, if you want to preserve yourself online forever, there's options out there to do that. This is one of them.
Cemetery headstones have not changed appreciably in the past 5,000 years. For the past 110 years, the Quiring family of artists and craftsmen have been designing original stories in stone to help families express their love, preserve their family heritage, and work through the grieving process. Today, our mobile population has further increased the separation of families worldwide. What hasn't changed over the centuries, though, is our desire to keep the memory of loved ones alive for generations yet to come. Quiring Monuments is now pleased to introduce an innovative new approach to memorialization, the living headstone. Quiring has created a new type of headstone which connects people regardless of where they reside. Our Living Headstone Memorial blends the timeless traditional value of granite headstones with the newest technology available to provide an interactive, living memorial legacy for future generations. Similar to a personal Facebook page, a Living Headstone archive site contains information you and friends can add about your loved one, such as an obituary, family heritage and history, photos, comments by friends and relatives, and even a map to locate the memorial in the cemetery. Quiring Monuments can add a link onto the memorial, which enables users of smartphones and mobile devices to scan and automatically connect to a personalized website, which contains family information in a virtual archive that will remain accessible for future generations. It can be viewed on the mobile device as visitors wander through the cemetery, or by simply typing in a unique web address into your computer internet browser. Although others may view the information, only visitors authorized by the family administrator can post information on the web page. This link can be applied to new or existing cemetery headstones, mausoleum shutters, cremation urns, garden benches, or as an addition to a public memorial. In situations where cremated remains were previously scattered, a miniature memorial plaque with a digital link is available for display in your home or garden, or even on a field stone in a green burial cemetery. Bring your headstone to life and share the memories of a loved one forever.
these are just options. You can do, the great thing is you can do what you want to do, but make those wishes ahead of time. Okay, so just to share some resources with you, if you want to kind of dig a little deeper, you can go to digitaldeathguide.com for more information to kind of help guide you through this process for more things. mywishes.co.uk. You can go to usa.gov and do a search for a social media will and download a template to kind of help you start the process of, listing these digital assets and determining what it is and stating what you want to do with those digital assets. If you are a Google account user, if you're a Gmail user, you may want to do a search for inactive account manager, where you can designate someone on your behalf to manage your account upon your death, or if you become incapacitated. And the same goes with Facebook as well. You can go to the Facebook Help Center on your Facebook account and go there. The second to last video, this is the book written by Evan Carroll, who is being interviewed on CBS with his book, Your Digital Afterlife. And I thought I would wrap up today by looking back and taking a look at Jesse Berlin's video that his dad finally got to see. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to wrap up here. If you, and again, I want to thank St. John's for having me here, but we're going to open it up for any questions that you might have. And
we have one in
Jen.
Yeah, we have the first one we have in the chat was from a little while ago. You alluded to it, but maybe you could expand. What keeps the password manager from being hacked?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. So yep. There were only, like I said, the only reason I'm showing it to folks is that they understand that password manager software is available. What keeps it from being hacked? Couldn't tell you. That's why I don't use it. That's why I personally don't recommend it. But I wanted to at least share the information so that people understood that something like that exists. Now, again, all of them claim that they do not have access to your passwords, okay? That all of your passwords are encrypted, which I believe, I thoroughly believe. But to your point, what keeps it from potentially getting hacked? And I don't want all my passwords in one location for a potential third-party hack. That's just me.
Someone else asks, is keychain a good equivalent to password box? I don't know if that was one of the ones you had mentioned.
No, if you're a Mac user, an Apple user, either on a Mac or on an iPad, there is your iPad, your iPhone, your iMac can store your passwords for you in what's called keychain. I don't use that, but you can. Again, the one thing I will say about Apple, many of you might know I'm a huge Apple fan, but one of the things that I really like about Apple is Apple, in my experience and everything that I've read, they really hold their customers' privacy and security as a #1 priority. If you remember, several years ago, there was a terrorist attack in the United States, and the federal government wanted Apple to break in to the terrorists' iPhone. And Apple said no, for 2 reasons. One, we can't, because it's encrypted and we don't save that information. And 2, even if we could, we wouldn't do it because that violates our privacy policy, even though this person's a terrorist. And I'm glad they did that, because as soon as the federal government asks for one person's information to be decrypted by Apple, what is going to hold them back from doing that to anybody else? So to answer your question, Keychain is a very similar thing, but it's all within the Apple universe. I personally don't use it, but again, it's up to you whether or not you want to use that.
All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any, but we'll give you a few moments if anyone wants to type them in the chat.
Let's see. I've got here, the Rolodex provides flexibility, add new accounts, update, change passwords. I add any relevant 800 numbers and so on. Yeah, a Rolodex is great, but don't keep it on your desk. It's if I break into your house, I grab your computer and I grab your Rolodex. So a Rolodex is great, but put your Rolodex locked up someplace or hide it someplace where it can't be found. I know that's not convenient, but I don't want to give up security for convenience. The person that I was mentioning in the beginning of my talk, where I'm helping them manage all their passwords, I forgot they actually have them on the Rolodex too. So they have passwords in their Rolodex, on both their iPhones, both their iPads, written down on pieces of paper. It's like in 8 different locations, and none of them, they're all out of sync. So what we're doing is I'm collecting all of those passwords and cross-checking them and making sure. And what we're going to do is create a master list of every confirmed password and account, and we're throwing out all the other stuff. And then we're giving a copy of that master password list to a loved one.
Yeah, Shirley asked, but how about giving your password info to an executor of your will or a lawyer?
Definitely. Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you give it to a family member, that's great. I mean, obviously, you're going to give it to someone that you trust, but make sure, and this sounds kind of obvious, make sure that that family member is going to keep your stuff safe, that it's not on the refrigerator where it says, you know, Nana's email address, Nana's PayPal account, you know, that's not safe.
This is a good question. So my wife and I share the same email and Facebook. Are there any special issues or things we should do because of that?
Not that I can think of, you know. No, I think that's perfectly fine. You know, is just making sure that the other person knows what your password credentials are. You know, when you log into Facebook, many times you don't have to type in your password every time because your computer or your browser remembers it for you. Okay, so many times you may have a Facebook account or an email account and you haven't entered your password in 2 years because your computer is remembering it for you. And that's not good because you don't remember it.
That may have been our last one. If anybody has any others.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap up a little early today.
Yeah, looks so. Just a reminder, the recording will be sent out, available for a limited time to the link, along with the survey. So we thank you for filling out the survey and doing that with letting us know how we are doing and for future topics. So just a reminder on that.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good
All right.
afternoon, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.